Federal government freezes decision to sell Air Force Chinooks.
Protesters greet flagship of the US 7th Fleet in Brisbane.
Queensland coach calls for changes after New South Wales end their losing streak. Good evening.
Good evening.
The mothballing of the Air Force's giant Chinook helicopters at Amberley is under review following the devastating floods in Queensland and New South Wales. Answering a question from Senator Flo Peterson, the Defence Minister has revealed the decision to sell off the Chinooks had been frozen. Throughout the flood crisis, state politicians and rescue authorities criticised the absence of the twin-rotor choppers.
The Vietnam War vintage helicopters were mothballed less than a year ago because they'd become too expensive to operate, but their rescue work was recognised as invaluable, and many critics say they should have been available to help during the disastrous floods that affected much of eastern Australia.
Help for people in time of desperate situations is something that ought to be taken into consideration as well as the military operation.
The government claims its review of the mothballing decision is not because of the floods. Defence Minister Robert Ray insists they'll only fly again if the military can justify it.
There's no denying, though, that if we were to retain some Chinook helicopters, they could be put to a civilian use.
The armed forces have been lobbying hard for the retention of the Chinooks. They say the giant helicopter's heavy lifting capacity has no equivalent anywhere else in the Defence Force. A key factor in the government's rethink is news from the Chinook's American manufacturer that new refitting technology can make the helicopters much cheaper to operate. Peter Harvey, Canberra.
On the day another former Cabinet Minister was committed for trial, Special Prosecutor Doug Drummond has indicated more corruption charges are pending. Already 210 people have been charged, and Mr Drummond says all prosecutions associated with the Fitzgerald inquiry should be launched by December, allowing him to bow out.
Ivan Gibbs today became the fourth former National Party minister committed to trial on misappropriation charges. The man leading the actions, Special Prosecutor Doug Drummond QC, appointed in December 1988 to prosecute those suspected of corruption uncovered by the Fitzgerald inquiry. In his annual report to Parliament, Mr Drummond says those charged include a former police commissioner, 6 former cabinet ministers, a former superintendent, 3 detectives and 19 serving or former non-commissioned officers. Also charged, alleged SP bookies and brothel keepers. He indicates other prosecutions are imminent, with all commencing before December. A large number of trials, he says, should be over by then. For that reason, he won't seek another extension of his term, and his office will be wound down at the end of the year.
This will be the end of a phase in the cleaning up of this state. It will be a step on the way to achieving a completely clean and proper political system.
The cost of Mr Drummond's role in the 12 months to last December was $4.6 million. More than half was for legal counsel. Mr Wells says that's a small price to pay.
There's a certain expense involved in putting an end to corruption in this state. We've got a mandate to implement the Fitzgerald process and get rid of corruption. We will implement that mandate.
Once Mr Drummond's work is finished, the Criminal Justice Commission will take over his role of crime fighter and prosecutor. Meanwhile, Bill Gunn has been appointed Deputy Chairman of the Parliamentary Criminal Justice Committee following the resignation of Micah Hearn. Neville Harper is the new National Party member. Lane Calcutt, National 9 News.
Queensland Health Minister Ken McElligott has foreshadowed a public inquiry into Townsville's psychiatric ward 10B. The move follows long-running allegations of patient abuse and malpractice against 2 of the ward's former doctors.
Just 4 days ago, Mr McElligott told the 60 Minutes program a public inquiry would not be held. But a Queensland Medical Board report into allegations against former Ward 10B doctors John Lindsay and Bevan Cant found insufficient evidence to prosecute. Both have been accused of patient abuse and malpractice. Mr McElligott today cast doubts on the adequacy of the board investigation.
Well, it throws into question just what investigations the board made and what material they had available to them.
The Medical Board review was the latest in a long line of investigations. The Minister told Parliament there is still deep public concern about 10B and there is additional evidence so far not investigated. Mr McElligott will take a submission to Cabinet in 2 weeks following a Royal College of Psychiatrists report. A public inquiry is an option.
The next inquiry, whatever form it takes, has to be the end of this thing. We really do have to get on with providing first-class facilities for the mentally ill in that area of the state.
The Ward 10B Action Group has welcomed Mr McElligot's support for a full inquiry.
There's still not a firm commitment for a full public inquiry, but at least we're starting that slow climb back up again.
Rain Grady, National 9 News.
In an embarrassment for the government, Justice Minister Michael Tate has been censured by the Senate for comments that led to a drugs trial being aborted. But despite calls from the opposition, the Prime Minister says he won't sack him.
Opposition leader John Hewson, a Keep Fit fanatic, was running for office in a literal sense this morning, saving taxpayers the cost of a chauffeured car to bring him to Parliament House. But the politician really on the run was Justice Minister Michael Tate.
He should be sacked. He should resign.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister publicly rebuked Senator Tate for what he called an appalling lapse of judgment in making comments which led to a drug smuggling trial in Sydney being aborted. But he stopped short of sacking the minister because Senator Tate said he'd not known the trial was in progress. The offending comments concerned the arrest in Thailand of Prasat UN.
There's no doubt that this man has been the #1 importer of heroin into Australia during the 1980s.
There are few things more sacred in the criminal law than presuming a person innocent until found guilty. And for a person who carries the title Minister for Justice, to reverse that indicates that he has no place in the ministry.
The aborted trial involved UN's sister, along with her Australian boyfriend Donald Tate and his son Victor. This afternoon in the Senate, while repeating that he'd been unaware a trial was in progress, Senator Tate admitted he had been informed at the time the defendants were arrested and charged early last year. Senate opposition leader Rob Hill immediately moved to have him censured.
If the trial wasn't taking place, the trial was pending. So Senator Tate knew there was a trial to take place, at least.
Senator Tate protested that he'd only been told the names of the Australians arrested at the time and delivered a speech that amounted to a mea culpa.
I was carried away by an enthusiasm for the collaborative and cooperative effort which had issued in the arrest of that person in Thailand.
But the Australian Democrats, who hold the balance of power in the Senate, backed the opposition. That meant the censure motion passed 37 votes to 32, but there's no indication Senator Tate is considering resignation, every indication that the Prime Minister is still backing him. Laurie Oakes, Canberra.
Next in the news, passive smoking and cancer.
Also Victory Day, show of force.
She's travelled a long way to tie the knot.
I've been after him for 20 years.
But delays could put the big day on hold. The Flying Doctors tonight, 8:30 on 9.
There are special moments that you wish could happen every day. That tender touch, that winning smile mean more than words can say. And Arnott's chocolate biscuits are the ones they love the best. Tim Tam, caramel crowns, fruit and nut, mint slice and the rest. Yes, Arnott's chocolate biscuits are the ones they love the best.
Sometimes will forever stay with me. The times we play together, I look forward to their magic moments spent with you. We've shared so many good times, now I see Whiskers makes it possible for you and me.
Chloe loves all the Whiskers varieties, and because it's Whiskers, it's got all she needs.
Thanks, Whiskers, for the times we love the best.
Only Whiskers is good enough for Chloe.
How about a pizza? Oh, my dear, we need nourishment. A more appropriate meal is Mr. Hines' higher fibre hoe soup. You've served quite enough faults for one day.
Hines, the soup's most suitable.
I think women especially realise with the way society is changing, they have to guarantee their own security instead of thinking, oh, well, it'll be all right in the end, someone's going to look after me. So that's why Metway appealed to me so much. The super package I found very impressive because it really did take into account you as an individual, especially in my business. I need this flexibility.
For real security, Metway Super is banking your way for life.
No Way Jose says no way to fatty foods, but Dot's got McCain cholesterol-free super fries cooked in polyunsaturated vegetable oil, which proves a No Way Jose is no match for a Dot with a lot. Ah, McCain, you've done it again.
Despite the slowing economy, there's been only a slight increase in the number out of work. 520,000 people were looking for jobs in April, 6.2% of the workforce. In Queensland, the rate last month was down slightly to 7.6, with 108,900 unemployed.
Trying to show they're still a force, thousands of Soviet troops have paraded through Moscow to mark a wartime anniversary. But the Red Army's big display could be one of its last, with President Gorbachev considering a smaller, more efficient military.
It was the sort of show the Soviet military regularly performed pre-Gorbachev. But even he didn't dare stop this one, the 45th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany, and a long-awaited opportunity for the Soviet generals to flex a little muscle in front of a leader who badly needs their support. Last week, the new-look People's May Day Parade was a debacle when Gorbachev was booed from the rostrum. But not today, all smiles in fact, and from Defence Minister Dmitry Yazov, confirmation that the army would help with reforms, but a warning that the military threat to the USSR still remained. Even in the rebellious Republic of Lithuania, the Soviet military mounted a big parade despite the protest by local authorities. The result was entirely predictable. There were boos and catcalls as the weaponry moved through Vilnius, as well as the insults the local people threw flowers. When the generals decided enough was enough, the troops moved on the crowd, forcing them into the back streets. Despite the smiles today, Gorbachev is warning the disgruntled military they, like the rest of the Soviet Union, must expect change, and not necessarily to their liking. Robert Penfold, National 9 News.
Riot police in South Korea have battled thousands of students protesting against a new coalition which they believe will lead the country back to dictatorship. In the worst violence in years, they lashed out against the merger of President Roh Tae-woo's ruling party with two former opposition parties. Armed with rocks and firebombs, they poured into the streets, attacking police who fought back with tear gas. Outnumbered, scores of policemen were taken captive and treated like prisoners of war. Violence continued into the night with police vehicles set alight. Windows of the US Information Services building were smashed. Firebombs set the ground floor ablaze.
In the latest blow to the tobacco industry, American researchers claim to have proved that other people's cigarettes can kill you. The anti-smoking lobby in Australia has already seized on the findings, which have linked passive smoking to nearly 4,000 cases of cancer.
Liesl Scholem believes she's a victim of passive smoking. Her doctor claims her emphysema may be linked to working for 13 years in a smoky office of the New South Wales Health Department.
Well, it's changed my life quite considerably. I get extremely tired, and there are all sorts of things that people do quite normally that I can't do.
Though smoking is now banned in most government offices, and some companies like Shell and BHP have limited smoking in the workplace, officials say more needs to be done.
I think that we'll be continuing to push for legislation. I think that it is inevitable that it will come. The question is how soon.
Now a report from America's Environment Protection Agency has gone a step further, classifying smoke from other people's cigarettes as a carcinogen, a direct cause of cancer.
Going in a room where anybody is smoking is more dangerous than going in a room with asbestos, going in a room with radon, or any other air pollutant.
Though in the United States passive smoking is being blamed for nearly 4,000 cases of lung cancer each year, the tobacco industry won't acknowledge the danger.
Well, there really isn't a scientific consensus on whether or not passive smoking is in fact harmful to those who don't smoke.
The American warship USS Blue Ridge is docking in Brisbane this evening, part of its Australian tour to commemorate the Battle of the Coral Sea. Anti-nuclear groups have protested against its presence in Brisbane waters. Police ensured safe passage for both.
Steaming into Moreton Bay this afternoon, one of the world's most sophisticated ships. The flagship of America's legendary 7th Fleet, it's a communications and command vessel brimming with space-age computer and satellite technology. The Blue Ridge is the eyes and ears of the US Navy's biggest fleet, the brains behind the brawn of 60 warships, many of them nuclear capable.
We hope by being here to strengthen the long-standing ties of friendship between Australia and the U.S.
Instead of a battery of armoury on its decks, the Blue Ridge is laden with high-tech antennae and radar sensors scanning an 80 million square kilometre area of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. It's a ship that carries a lot of secrets, intelligence gathered 24 hours a day from all corners of the world. And over the next 4 days, Brisbane will be fleet headquarters.
We receive a substantial amount of message traffic each day, somewhere up to as high as 2,500 messages.
The Blue Ridge's visit, its first to the town, is the last stop on a tour of Australia to commemorate the Battle of Coral Sea. Chris Blackburn, National 9 News.
The Brisbane Peace and Environment Fleet gathered on the bank, flying their flags and protest banners. But even before the USS Blue Ridge appeared, 2 protesters in an inflatable boat were snared by police in a dinghy, their vessel towed away and impounded. Only a few of the demonstrators entered the water, most clinging to surfboards, the leader of the New South Wales Peace Squadron swimming.
And we feel it's important to show the public generally that nuclear-armed warships are not welcome into our ports.
As water police surrounded the Blue Ridge, the fleet scrambled to head off the flagship of the 7th Fleet.
We do get concerned when people place themselves in jeopardy, and occasionally that happens.
As protesters began swimming, the police pounced, diving overboard to make arrests. The police moved in to warn the demonstrators. Several more demonstrators were arrested before police lined the banks to halt the demonstration as the USS Blue Ridge docked. Jane Hodgkinson, National 9 News.
Sport with Andrew Slack now, and you were right, Andrew, a New South Wales victory.
8-0 in the end, Mike. Queensland's key men look for changes in personnel. Would Sam Bacco be fit for Melbourne? Sam's answer after the break.
Help us with better home insurance. Help us buy our dream home.
Help us buy our business premises.
How can we help you?
Help us take the worry out of superannuation.
We're the helpful Queenslander, helping you your whole life through. We're the helpful Queenslander, how can we help you? When you'd love a meal, love it on Salada. When you'd love a snack, love it on Salada. When you'd love a bite, love it on Salada. Versatile Salada for all the foods we love today.
Only Arnott's Salada cracker biscuits are crisp, light, and so versatile.
Love it meal size, snack size, or bite size. Versatile Salada for all the foods we love today.
We created the Sonova skincare range for the face of Australia and its changing environment. Its burning sun, its salt sea, its drying winds, and its everyday life. The Sonova skincare range at a price that gives excellent quality for excellent value. Sonova. For the changing face of Australia.
Bring a fresh touch naturally anywhere so very perfectly with Glade Country Pottery.
New Glade Country Pottery air fresheners.
Light fragrances of country, fresh meadow spices quietly with Glade Country Pottery.
Because pottery is porous, it naturally slowly releases its fragrances for 30 days.
New Glade Pottery, freshening never looked so good naturally.
Double cheese cheeseburger is back. McDonald's double cheese cheeseburger is back.
For a limited time, McDonald's double burger is back to all beef patties.
Double.
2 slices of cheese.
Cheese.
Now only $1.75. All you have to do is ask for
Double cheese cheeseburger, please.
and that's no double Dutch.
Good time, great taste of double cheese cheeseburger is back.
For a limited time.
At the Sydney Football Stadium last night, a committed and talented New South Wales side handed Queensland their first State of Origin defeat on Australian soil in 3 years. A combination of Blues' brilliance and Maroon mistakes helped the home side break their 8-match drought. Attempting to notch their 9th successive win, the team went to the ground under police escort. the boys in blue providing one of the few clean breaks the Queenslanders made all night. A record 41,000 spectators jammed into the stadium. Some might have felt they dropped in on a war zone or accidentally ended up at the Opera House. But when the football fireworks got underway, they were encouraged by the shots New South Wales fired. Ricky Walford denied a try on debut by a forward pass.
Forward pass, was it?
Another 4-pointer went begging soon after.
The pass out this time, O'Connor. That pass is forward.
Queensland's ball control was abysmal. In one 8-minute period of the first half, there were 5 unforced errors, giving the Blues an almost constant supply of possession.
Because I thought our defence was all right, but you can't win when you drop the ball on first and second tackle, you know, you just can't do it.
New South Wales showed that 10 minutes before half-time, superb lead-up and finishing, giving Mark McGaw what was to prove the only try of the match.
That's a try to New South Wales.
New South Wales may well have led by over 12 points at half-time, but even with O'Connor's conversion, it was only 6-0 and the Maroons were still in it. Queensland's defence was impressive, but the kicking and chasing game of Ben Elias was perhaps the key to the second half.
Big tackle by the New South Wales captain.
Laurie Daly confirmed his promise with a top display in both attack and defence. A knock-on detected by referee David Manson denying the Canberra player his second try in State of Origin. O'Connor kicked a further penalty and, appropriately enough, the full-time hooter sounded as a Queenslander lost possession in the tackle. A rare sight in recent years, a crowded New South Wales dressing room. Coach Jack Gibson obviously impressed with his skipper, who believed the match was won 48 hours before kick-off.
I think the turning point was two days ago at training, mate. Our attitude at training was so sharp, so professional, and, you know, going into a game with that you know, with that attitude is certainly a great turning point, let me tell you.
While the King entertained the apparent heir, Artie Beetson was sombre, but not that sombre.
Well, I'm not about to go out and buy a packet of razor blades.
And one of Queensland's best, winger Les Kiss, is confident there'll be plenty of improvement come the May 30 clash in Melbourne.
If we can just increase that by 50%, we're going to scare the hell right out of those cockroaches.
Although not hitting the panic button, Queensland selectors are likely to make changes for the second State of Origin clash in Melbourne in 3 weeks. The forward pack looks set for a reshuffle, while Wally Lewis, depending on fitness, will return to provide leadership and direction.
Contingent. He has 2 weeks to get his injured hamstring right and convince selectors he can lead the Maroons in Melbourne.
But I would like to get a club game under my belt. It's, you know, it'll be some time then since I've played a game of football. And I think it'd be a little unwise to try and go into a State of Origin match without having played at least one club game.
While a fit Lewis is an automatic selection, coach Arthur Beetson last night hinted at further changes.
Well, it only takes a couple of players to transform a good side into a great side.
110-kilo prop Sam Bacco is one possibility. He's had only 20 minutes of fixture football and returns from 2 knee operations to play reserve grade against East on Sunday. Bacco has a perfect State of Origin record, 5 games, 5 wins and 2 Man of the Match awards.
If I was called on to do the job, I think I can handle it.
Without putting his fellow teammates down, Sam saw a weakness in last night's front row.
Yeah, I think we lacked a bit of up front as far as breaking the line. You know, there's, that's how I play my game. You know, I know that's the best part of my game.
Test hooker Kerrod Walters may also be recalled. Today he was at work selling cars, but like Benny Elias, he's at his best selling dummies to the opposition. To regain his spot, he must displace his brother, Stephen.
I think my game revolves a lot around speed, where Stephen's more around his strength. He's a very strong player. Probably a lot better defender than what I am, but I rely on just speed and just backing up.
If there is a dark horse, look out for Canterbury second rower Darren Smith. The former East player has the much-needed pace, missing from the Queensland back row last night. Alan Thomas, National 9 News.
1 down and 2 to go. That's our sport for tonight. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Andrew. The share market closed weaker following a day of lacklustre trading. The All Ordinaries fell just over 3 points. Our dollar will buy almost 75 3/4 US cents. Gold is slightly down. 3 Division 1 winners in Lotto collecting almost $315,000. Division 2 paid almost $10,000.
John Schluter's weather, then the Concord of the next century.
Coming up, National Party leader Tim Fischer putting politics ahead of his quest for a bride, and British protests over the multi-billion-dollar Channel Tunnel. That's next at 6:30.
Now there's a fast food that's actually very good for you. And it doesn't come in a bun. It has a distinctive, delicious taste without needing any herbs or spices. And because it cooks a lot faster than you'd think, you don't have to wait and wait. It's Sun-Brown Quick. Yes, Quick. The brown rice that cooks in half the time.
Everywhere there's work to be done, there are traders doing business. Ford Traders with economical diesel power. Ford Traders, some models with suspension cabs for a smooth and stable ride. Ford Traders that sail through your workload and are comfortable in town or on a long run. Ford Traders that deliver the goods year after year. Get into business with your Ford Trader.
Here we see a yoga teacher demonstrating how to achieve total relaxation. And here we see Arthur Bailey demonstrating how he achieves total relaxation with the help of his new feet seat. Yes, the feet seat certainly makes the most comfortable chair even more comfortable, transporting you to a state of total relaxation in a matter of seconds. The feet seat. Total relaxation for around $20.
How about a pizza? Oh, my dear, we need nourishment. A more appropriate meal is Mr. Hines' higher fibre hoe soup. You've served quite enough faults for one day.
Heinz, the soup's most suitable.
The next time you buy a carpet, remember, only wool carpet naturally resists dirt and grime. Easy to clean wool. Only wool can do it.
Well, the higher than usual temperatures continue to get in Brisbane today, with the minimum 17 degrees. That's 4 above for this time of the year, and the maximum was 25, 2 above, so the cool weather still hasn't hit us at this stage. Now, currently, barometer is 1,021 and rising. Humidity is 69%. The temperature's on 21 degrees. Let's have a look at the radar. A little bit of colour around tonight, particularly around the airport. That's the airport showing there. So a few showers happening to the south, particularly around the Bayside areas, and a few out to Moreton Bay. And there'll be a few more showers coming up again tomorrow. Now onto the cloud movement, starting with the world map as usual. This movement up until 4:30 this afternoon. You can see these showers up and down the coast of Queensland just showing there. That's being caused by those fresh southeasterly winds onto the coast. Also the usual cold fronts moving through the bight, and the only other cloud worthwhile looking at is a fairly high level cloud around Western Australia, which certainly won't concern us. Now onto the synoptic situation, and that high in the Tasman Sea is continuing to dominate the weather with fresh southeasterly winds coming onto the coast, causing those brief showers. Tomorrow, the series of highs will continue to progress across the continent, and the southeast flow will continue. So the next couple of days, a few showers around, but still plenty of sunshine. And then by Sunday, we should be back to completely fine conditions. Now let's check the capital city forecasts around the country for tomorrow. And Darwin, Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne and Canberra all will be fine. Showers easing for Hobart, and a shower or two for Sydney. The northern centres of Queensland, Mount Isa will be fine in 30. Cairns showers, a shower or two elsewhere, and windy in Mackay, temperatures the mid to high 20s. Right, the southeast corner of Queensland now for tomorrow, mostly fine with only a brief shower or two for the southeast corner, 17 to 25 for the coasts. Ipswich 15 degrees to 27, Toowoomba 14 to 22, and Gympie 15 to 25. Moreton Bay seas to 1 metre, southeast to east winds at 10 to 15 knots. There'll be southerly winds at 5 to 10 knots inshore tonight, and also a few showers coming up tomorrow. Brisbane will be mostly fine, only a brief shower or two, so a good day with still plenty of sunshine coming up. Light to moderate southeast to east winds. The minimum will be 16 degrees and a top once again tomorrow of 25 degrees as we look ahead to Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, brief showers. Sunday should be back to completely fine conditions, so it's looking good for the weekend. I'll give you the full rundown tomorrow night. See you then. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John. Australian travellers could soon be winging their way to Europe in just 12 hours. "21 years after building the Concorde, British and French engineers have started work on a version for the 21st century. Bigger and more powerful than today's sleek plane, the Super Concorde will be able to carry 250 people non-stop for 12,000 kilometres. The $10 billion jet should be in the skies by the year 2005. And that's news to the moment. Jana's next with a current affair. From the National 9 News team, good night.
Hello, thanks for joining us. Tonight, psychosurgery victims who believe the New South Wales government has jumped the gun with its new Mental Health Act and the loneliness of the long-distance politician for Tim Fischer rebuilding the National Party takes priority over his quest for a bride.
A girl that I marry will have to be
I noticed he was cutting a fairly dashing figure on the dance floor, so maybe he's trying to woo the ladies in that way.
Yes, I'm single, but I'm not working at staying single, and we'll see what happens down the track.
Oh, he can put his shoes under my bed any time.
For most of the last decade, psychiatrists, lawyers and politicians in New South Wales have been debating the need for reform of the state's mental health services. Well, in the early hours of this morning, the New South Wales Parliament passed a new Mental Health Act, drawn up as a result of those years of debate, but it hasn't ended the controversy. Civil liberties groups have criticised sections of the legislation which allow people to be forcibly admitted to hospital. Tribunals and magistrates are also given power to make community treatment orders which will allow medical staff to administer medication to patients not confined to institutions. The Greiner government's decision to push ahead with the new legislation has also outraged the victims of the Chelmsford scandal. Hundreds of patients given deep sleep therapy and psychosurgery, often without their knowledge, at a Sydney private hospital in the 60s and 70s. As Tracy Bowden reports, they believe the government jumped the gun by not waiting for the outcome of a Royal Commission into their experiences.
They said, well, take this tablet, it'll settle you down. And 10 days later, I woke up with double pneumonia, pleurisy, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and an oxytype brain damage.
It was a real-life horror story, told by not one victim, but hundreds.
I was given ECT and I was asleep for about 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
I was given deep sleep treatment. I was treated for mental illness. A psychiatrist said many years later I was probably just a young, mixed-up kid. I was 18 at the time.
You just came out not knowing what had actually happened to you.
The victim who spearheaded the campaign for an inquiry into what went on at Chelmsford was Barry Hart. He first went public back in 1984.
I saw 10 solicitors and 6 barristers during that time. I was told to forget about the matter by certain barristers.
I have 2 very jagged holes there where the metals were placed over them and wired into my skull.
In 1988, Gwen Whitty told us her story. In the late 1960s, she'd been suffering from anxiety, but ended up undergoing psychosurgery and deep sleep therapy.
We did not sign, we did not consent, we weren't told about any part of it in any way, not one word.
Gwen's doctor was Harry Bailey, the man who introduced the controversial and now outlawed deep sleep therapy to Australia.
You felt that you had found that doctor who was going to be that special one for you that was going to make it all right.
He was Jesus Christ.
Although Gwen and her husband Bob endured years of suffering, at least she survived Chelmsford. A couple of dozen other patients weren't so lucky. Among them, a young Italian girl, Miriam Podio, who went to Chelmsford after a broken love affair. Peter Clark, a healthy young policeman who just wanted help for depression. Elsie Dennis, who went to hospital after suffering a nervous breakdown. Noel Ashley, who committed suicide just 5 days after leaving Chelmsford. Dancer Sharon Hamilton, who also took her own life and left all her money to Dr. Bailey. And journalist Audrey Francis, who underwent deep sleep therapy for depression.
What happened is a matter for the historical record. And
As the victims pushed for a royal commission, opposition health spokesman Peter Collins joined them. But once in government, it was a different story. Your words, the public and the Chelmsford victims have a right to find out what happened and could only do so through a royal commission. Now you're saying no royal commission for the Chelmsford victims.
I have indicated consistently that a public inquiry is needed into the full range of mental health services in this state, because it's not
I'm
just...
talking about the Chelmsford
victims. I know
victims.
you're talking about the Chelmsford victims, and when I...
3 months later, Mr. Collins bowed to pressure, announcing a royal commission would investigate deep sleep therapy at Chelmsford as part of its wider review of mental health services.
I was amazed, astounded that we got a Royal Commission. I thought, wacko, here we come now, we're going to make it all right.
The day is going to arrive when everything's going to come out and the whole Chelmsford scandal will be publicly aired and some kind of reform will occur as a result of this.
Are you satisfied that justice will be done?
I doubt it very much. I'm very worried because...
With the first part of the commission nearing an end, we asked some of the victims whether it's all been worthwhile.
The way things are going, we're only going backwards, we're not going forwards. Nobody seems to be taking heed of what's happened in the past.
I hope that we will come through with flying colours, but I have my doubts too.
So what would you like to see happen?
Well, my main hope was that the doctors and nurses would be criminally charged and the law changed so that nothing like this could ever happen again.
One person the Commission hasn't been able to question is Dr. Harry Bailey. He committed suicide in 1985.
We're furious with him for dying. How dare he die when we wanted to have it out with him? Or suicide, whatever he did. Who'll know whatever went on there.
Would compensation make you feel any better?
Well, it's not a matter of feeling better. We've lived without any money all of our lives, and we helped make these doctors pretty comfortably off too. They've got a nice good old slice of our money. It just seems logical to me that we should be reimbursed or compensated for having that earning capacity taken from us.
Nothing can compensate, but it would help a lot of people, let's face it. It's what they've been through. It would help them in their life because some of them just haven't been able to carry on with their normal life and their work.
But now the Chelmsford victims have a fresh concern. A new mental health bill passed just last night by the New South Wales Parliament. While it addresses some of the problems raised during the hearings, such as limiting the use of psychosurgery, its critics say the government should have waited for the recommendations of the Royal Commission.
The way they try and put the legislation through and changing, it doesn't look very hopeful if they're not even going to wait for the Royal Commission to be finalised.
They're pushing through a Mental Health Act, which will make it easier for psychiatrists to put people into psychiatric hospitals and treat them without consent and against their will. And they're not even bothering to consider the Royal Commission that's been set up to specifically look into abuses in psychiatric hospitals, both state and public psychiatric hospitals. Now, all the good intentions of the Royal Commission can recommend all these kind of things, but at the end of the day, if the system doesn't change because of this Royal Commission, the people like the bureaucracy or the politicians haven't got the will to change anything, the whole thing is going to be a gigantic waste of public money.
Tracy Bowden reporting. A spokesman for New South Wales Health Minister Peter Collins told us today there would be a 12-month review period following proclamation of the new Mental Health Act, which would allow the government to consider further amendments, including recommendations of the Chelmsford Royal Commission. Next up, Tim Fisher's one-man mission, putting the National Party back on an even keel.
Polishing up the prize here, George won this Philippines holiday last night, $15,000 worth. Still, he's going to risk it tonight, and he was very lucky last night. We'll see what happens tonight.
7 all, right? 6-7. So it's got to be a V6 and fuel injected, right? Right. One of those little computers under the bonnet so she'll really perform.
Hey, did you see that?
Yeah, that guy got into his car without a key.
No key.
Calculator buttons or something.
Digital entry pad, it's called.
Hobby blood.
The simply superb new Nissan Maxima. You said one day you'd own a car like this.
It's a Nissan.
A Nissan?
When this house came on the market, we really had to panic.
We really only sort of had 2 days in which to make up our mind.
We went to Metway and we found that not only were they prepared to give us the money, but the upfront costs were lower and the interest rate was just a touch below. It's the ideal house for us that we found first off, so it's really worked out the way we wanted it.
Eventually, probably 8 to 10 years down the track, it'll look lovely.
For real home loan service, Metway Bank is banking your way. Are you?
There are 2,115,437 women in Australia waiting for flowers on Mother's Day. So I suggest you order your flowers from Interflora now. or your mother might miss out. Interflora can deliver across Australia or across the world.
Interflora's simply the perfect way.
Following a low-fat diet can be really dull. Vegetables, cottage cheese, more cottage cheese. But now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Kraft Lights. Compared to natural cheddar cheese, they're 30% lighter in fat and cholesterol because Lights are a blend of cottage and cheddar cheese, but with a big cheddar taste. Kraft Lights. Isn't it time you saw the light?
The National Party was the big loser at the March 24 federal election. Its share of the vote collapsed in Queensland and northern New South Wales, and even its leader, Charles Blunt, became a casualty. In defeat, the Nationals turned to 44-year-old Tim Fischer, a surprising choice to just about everyone but Tim Fischer. He's the first Catholic, the first Vietnam veteran, and the first bachelor to lead the Nationals. Tim Fischer admits he's keen to change his bachelor status, but as Eric Campbell reports, his first priority is to re-establish the National Party as the political voice of the bush.
Mr. Weldon, greetings. How are you, Bill? Go, Vic. Not badly. Amanda?
Hello, Sean.
How was school?
This could have been as high as Tim Fischer's political star ever rose. An ordinary country member pressing the flesh and travelling the countryside in his bush seat of Farrer.
Up and at 'em. Yeah. Okay.
Nice to see you again.
Take care. Do a lot of driving, some single-engine Cessna to stretch the dollar further to make sure I get to as many functions as I possibly can in what is Australia's most elongated electorate.
But Tim Fischer has been called to greater things.
Morning. How are you, Jeff?
Unexpectedly, against all the predictions of sophisticated Canberra commentators, he's been made federal leader of the National Party. He's the MP who could become the second most powerful politician in the nation.
What this party must do is get itself firmly back onto the rails with its proper priorities and directions.
This was day one of his campaign. The Victorian Branch Conference in Mildura, where he set the future agenda.
In declaring conference officially open, I say to you, it is to the provincial bush first in the interest of rebuilding the National Party and so helping to rebuild this great nation of ours. The timing of it? Half an hour. Yeah, 5 minutes too long.
So who is this man who's been entrusted with leading the party to government from its worst election result since World War II? The party machine is keen to sell him as a cross between an ordinary farmer and a visionary statesman.
Great stuff, Tim.
Thank you.
Great.
Good content? You happy with the content?
Yeah,
that's
good
good.
stuff.
That we can bounce back from that situation.
He's also working hard at becoming a polished performer to the dreaded media, which he holds largely responsible for the party's woes.
I have to say that there has been a most uneven application of inquiries and treatment by the media of corruption at state level in Australia.
But it's all a far cry from his previous reputation as a whistle-stop politician, which earned him the nickname 2-Minute Tim.
Well, the fact is I have to cover a large range of functions in Australia's most elongated electorate.
Tim Fischer plans to keep on the move to sell the party's back to the bush philosophy and find out what the voters there really want.
It's, in one sense, back to the black stump, you might say, but utilising modern technology to cover as much ground as possible.
But when you're driving around the countryside, what sort of message are you getting from the people?
Well, a lot of concern about interest rates.
When are you going to wake Mr. Keating up?
He just hasn't got a clue the extent of economic agony he's creating in the bush.
Well, it's about time he got in contact with real life, or the whole bloody country will be stuck.
Not to mention Tim Fischer's social life. So with all this driving, is it an advantage or a disadvantage being single?
In many ways, it's an advantage. You can be more flexible, and it's a cruel life for the spouse of any federal member, especially in country electorates, because of the horrific demands made on the time of a federal member. And I have the added disadvantage of having Australia's most elongated electorate.
Have you had any offers?
Let me just say I'm not working at staying single. I enjoy the company of good lady friends. I'm sorry that time is so difficult.
You'd be a fairly eligible catch being head of the National Party now, wouldn't you?
Well, that's for others to judge, and I'm getting on with that job, and also when I can fit it in, my own private social activities and my bushwalking, canoeing, tennis, and other hobby interests.
You've actually promoted the Murray as a crocodile-free river.
There was a scare period for American tourists when they were very worried that they might be taken by crocodiles if they set foot anywhere in northern Australia. Of course, that was a gross exaggeration, but it allowed for entrepreneurs and others, including the federal member for Farrer, to remind people that the Murray is crocodile-free. It is a huge recreational area. We have the greatest collection of golf courses in the southern hemisphere and a range of activities at Mungo, which I also strongly commend in what is Australia's most elongated federal electorate.
You know what that bloody Ron Best did? Came over to my electorate, walked past the poker machine, put him
But man does not live by politics alone. And at the party's dinner dance, it soon becomes clear that some women are interested in more than just his elongated electorate. It's a very big one, isn't it?
It is. It goes right down the Murray.
Oh, he can put his shoes under my bed any time.
The girl that I marry will have to be as soft and as pink as a nursery.
I noticed he was cutting a fairly dashing figure on the dance floor, so maybe he's trying to woo the ladies in that way.
A lot of romances started dancers.
Well, then perhaps they do, but let's wait and see. As I say, I don't dwell on my private life, but I do very much enjoy these happy occasions when
Eric Campbell cramping Tim Fisher's style a bit, I think. Next up, British protests over the multi-billion-dollar Channel Tunnel linking them with Europe.
For the first time on television.
We're hot now.
8:30 Sunday on 9, a sensational cast unraveled the mystery of Agatha Christie's The Man in the Brown Suit.
Help me with better car insurance.
Help us to protect our family with life insurance.
Help us with our savings and investments.
How can we help you?
Help me with a personal loan.
We're the helpful Queenslander, helping you your whole life through. We're the helpful Queenslander, how can we help you?
Bring a fresh touch naturally anywhere so very perfectly with Glade Country Pottery.
New Glade Country Pottery air fresheners.
Light fragrances of country, fresh meadow spices quietly with Glade Country Pottery.
Because pottery is porous, it naturally slowly releases its fragrances for 30 days.
New Glade Pottery, freshening never looked so good naturally.
Who would have thought an Australian company could take on the world's steel giants and win? BHP Steel did it, and now makes steel sleepers for the toughest twists and turns of Canada's British Columbian Railway.
In really arduous conditions of terrain and climate, BHP steel sleepers survive where wood splinters.
And the export dollars keep rolling home.
With the sleeper under test in Alaska and in other parts of the US, the future looks great.
Getting out, getting on with it. That's the strength of Australian steel people.
The new V6 fuel-injected Hyundai Sonata. Enough power to drag off just about anything.
Ever since Napoleonic times, there's been talk of a tunnel under the English Channel, with most of the support coming from Europe. While there have been many attempts, it took Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher to finally get the project underway, and it's due for completion in about 3 years. Michael Holmes reports on one of the most ambitious engineering projects in history and those who want to stop it.
Just south of London, the county of Kent, known as the Garden of England. It's a peaceful place, or at least it used to be. Every hour of every day, the island called Britain moves closer to being an island no more. It's called the Channel Tunnel, or more simply, the Channel. 100 metres below the surface, a trade and tourism link between Britain and France. A link that will change the face of Europe forever, like it or not. And there are plenty of people who do not.
If God had meant us to be joined to Europe, he would have joined us to Europe. He's made us an island, and an island we shall remain.
Kathy Medvin is on the front line of a bitter battle to scrap the channel. Her reasons include everything from fires to terrorism, rabies to claustrophobia. Oh, and also those tourists.
Well, I mean, some people just don't like the French. They find them arrogant. Some people, even more, don't like the Germans. The Channel has been our natural moat, and it's protected us through the centuries from all sorts of invaders.
It's the most expensive, privately financed engineering project in history. But around here, they're not interested in making this kind of history. On this side of the Channel, they're more in line with their former Prime Minister, Lord Palmerston, who in 1857 said, "Why would we ever want to shorten a distance we would all like to see made much greater?"
Do you like Europe? No. Never been to Europe in my life. I don't suppose I ever shall.
You've never been to Europe?
No.
Why not?
Not interested. Don't want to go.
The Reverend Roger Knight, fighting the Channel Tunnel from the pulpit.
With a bit of luck, if there's no rail link, they'll never finish the Channel Tunnel.
It's the wrong way to go to Calais.
The Good Reverend protests with the rest of Kent, protests against the tunnel and the rail link that will slice through his peaceful county en route to London. Apart from environmental matters, the Reverend Knight reckons the tunnel is downright unpatriotic.
But you are part of Europe, aren't you?
No, no way. Culturally, we're separate. We've developed separately over the centuries. Usually we've been at war with Europe for most of our history.
Reverend Knight preaches that if people want to go to France, they can take the ferry, just like they have for centuries, just like 15 million people will do this year.
We like being an island race. We had to put up with the French coming over in 1066, but since then we've been independent.
The Channel is a joint project between Britain and France. Provided nothing has been lost in translation, the teams of diggers working from either side plan to meet in the middle around November. It's by no means the first attempt at a Channel tunnel. Napoleon had the idea back in 1802. Since then, 27 attempts have failed. This one is going ahead, but at an almighty cost. The original bill of $11.5 billion has already topped $19 billion, and the Channel won't even be open for another 3 years.
The British people who've invested in the Channel Tunnel are traitors.
Traitors?
Yeah. Well, they're selling our country for their own profit. What other definition of treachery do you want?
38 kilometres away from English fears, the French, mindful of the trade benefits of a fast trip to London, love the Channel as much as the British hate it. In France, they've embraced the whole idea. High-speed trains are already in place, while in England, somewhat more sedate locos are in operation. And the people of Kent are fighting tooth and nail to stop anything faster.
When you go to France, you see their reaction to the tunnel. They generally love the idea.
Of course they do. It's Mitterrand succeeding where Napoleon failed.
Is there not anything good about the Channel Tunnel?
No, not a single thing.
This announcement concerns all foot passengers, all those passengers.
That stretch of water saved us in the last war.
and in the war, and in the 1418 war, so why should we alter it now?
You're convinced that it just won't happen?
Yes, I am actually, yes. I feel that it's going to fall flat on its face and indeed be Thatcher's folly, as we all like to call it.
We don't want to be United States of Europe. We don't want our pint glasses being taken away for half litres. We don't want to see kilometres per hour on the roads. We're British and we're proud of it.
So let's all get on the train. Don't worry about conservation. Kent will never be the same again. It's going to be the world's biggest station.
Pretty strong feelings on the channel. Michael Holmes reporting. Back in a moment.
Do you dream of going fishing? Just hauling in some brim? Or putting a veranda on an old Queenslander? Everybody's got a dream. What about retiring early? Giving up the sink for the swim? Take a holiday safari, grab a new Ferrari. Everybody's got a dream. Dreaming. Don't stop dreaming. Golden casket, 'cause everybody's got a dream. Know what I mean? Don't stop dreaming. Golden casket, 'cause everybody's got a dream.
Golden Casket, where thousands of dreams are drawn every week.
Everybody's got a dream.
At most menswear stores, for $299, you're lucky if you can buy just a quality suit. At Tony Barlow's, you not only get a quality suit, but a free shirt, free tie, and a free pair of shoes. All from $299, saving you $138. Total cover from Tony Barlow's. Tony Barlow's, free shirt, tie, and shoes with every suit purchased. 1 week only.
Imagine a food processor that had a big 1-litre bowl and a large feed tube for whole fruits and vegetables, with different speeds for different types of food, adjustable slicing, heavy dough kneader, even an egg whisk, and with it, free kitchen scales for Mother's Day. Then imagine the new multi-practic food processor by Braun.
Everything you wear says something about the kind of woman you are. That's why the perfume you choose is Tweed. Tweed says just what you want it to say, right through the day and longer. Tweed Parfum de Toilette Spray, the finishing touch.
The new V6 fuel-injected Hyundai Sonata. Enough power to drag off just about anything.
Tomorrow night, Chris Hill looks at the extraordinary lengths some pet owners will go to pamper their family pet.
Sal is on her way to the beauty parlour. Then I think she'll be going to a vet. The day around the traps with Nigel is a learning experience. I now knew why Pekingese looked all scrunched, and who would have believed this sort of thing was still allowed to go on?
Sometimes you'll get them asking funny things like if you'll paint their toenails and put bows in their hair.
Do you believe it? Chris Hill with that tomorrow. And that is our program for tonight. Thank you for being with us. Good night.